Tonight on Steelers Talk, we got a lot to talk about on today's program. First up, we have the latest Aaron Rodgers injury update as he returned to practice today. And then a very prominent voice in NFL media says that the George Pickens trade is one of the worst trades in NFL history. I'm going to give my thoughts on that later in the show, so make sure you guys stick around. But if you guys want my instant reactions to all the top news stories that surround the Pittsburgh Steelers all throughout the year, I give my instant reactions on X before I come on here on YouTube. So if you guys actually want my instant reactions to injury updates and trade rumors and all this different stuff that comes out during the NFL calendar, you can follow me at Jack_Sperry. I also put my film analysis every single week up on my X because we can't put it up here on YouTube. So if you guys want to learn a little bit about Steelers football every single week as I go through my film study, I put my stuff up there on X. So if you guys want that extra Steelers content from me on the X platform, you can follow me at Jack_Sperry. Greatly appreciate your guys' support. All right, so we have the latest update on Aaron Rodgers here, where he said yesterday in his media availability that he was planning on practicing today. That's exactly what he did. He was at practice today with a pretty heavy wrist brace on his left wrist, and he was a limited participant. So he did not participate in team drills today, only individual stuff. And Mike Tomlin said on Tuesday that the goal is to get him into team drills on Friday. So that will be a really big day tomorrow to see what the injury update is on QB1. And as you guys can see here, you guys can see on that left wrist, you can see the little black brace that he is wearing there. On the videos that surfaced today, it looked like he was catching the football fine. And honestly, it doesn't cover up his hand too much. It really does focus on the wrist. So his ability to catch the football might not be super hindered at this point with this brace that he is using. So my guess is Rodgers is definitely going to play on Sunday. If he's already out there on the practice field, he's catching passes, all this different stuff with that brace on, I'm guessing he's going to be a full participant tomorrow, and then he's going to be good to go for Sunday afternoon. You can argue whether or not he should play on Sunday, but it certainly seems like A-Rod is determined to play this week in Chicago. You guys can take a look at the rest of the practice report today for the Pittsburgh Steelers. The other things of note is that Jaylen Warren and Alex Highsmith, two guys that did not practice on Wednesday, were also limited participants today. And also, you guys can see there that Keyshawn Williams is back as a full participant. He is in concussion protocol, so it's possible that he could get back to full action by Sunday as well. But now we can shift our focus here to something that's been a big talking point on Steelers Twitter this week, which is that Kay Adams, big NFL podcaster, said this week that the George Pickens trade is one of the worst in NFL history. And she, said this in with no holds barred. And, you look at the trade and it doesn't look great because George Pickens has been terrific this year in Dallas. And he's honestly been their number one receiver, with CeeDee Lamb being their number two guy. Pickens, I believe right now, is second in the league in receiving yards. He's almost at 1,000 yards already on the year. And all the Steelers got back for somebody that might be an all-pro this year is a third-round pick and a fifth-round pick. So on the surface, I can see why Kay thought this was a really bad trade. And this is what she had to say on her show this week. I think that trading George Pickens is probably going to go down as one of the worst deals in NFL history, and I mean that. I'm sorry to Steelers fans. I just think it's true. The best from the Dallas perspective, like what a haul. It is so clear, it is so glaringly obvious watching George Pickens last night, a day after Kenneth Gainwell led the Pittsburgh Steelers in receiving against the Bengals. This is clearly a bad call by the Steelers. I just think so. You're trying to find any semblance of consistency and rhythm outside of DK Metcalf in the Steelers passing game. It just doesn't exist. Now, for me personally, guys, I think it's too early to be saying declaratively, as Kay Adams does, this week, that this is already one of the worst trades in NFL history. All right, and there's a number of reasons for that. The first reason that I would say is that the GP situation certainly got past a certain point here in Pittsburgh, where not only the front office, not only the coaching staff, but it was the players that were fed up with George Pickens, and it got to a point where bringing him back into this locker room would have made it a bit toxic, I think. And, I think that was probably the best way forward for the Pittsburgh Steelers as an organization was to part ways with George Pickens and get what they could out of him in a trade. According to a report from Mark Caboli, at around the time that they traded him in early May, there was key locker room players, like team captain level players in the locker room that were quote unquote done with George Pickens. And once your team leaders are done with a certain player, I think it's time to probably part ways with that player. And obviously that stems from George being late to meetings, being late to practices, being late to games even. And then even in Dallas this past week, he had to sit out the first drive because apparently he was hungover and he was partying all night before with CeeDee Lamb the Sunday night before their Monday Night Football matchup this past week. So obviously those antics are still there in Dallas, even though he's putting up big numbers. And second, George Pickens, I don't think would have been maximized in the Steelers offense, all right? Especially after they acquired DK Metcalf, he would still be, the focus here. And, raise your hand if you think that George Pickens would be happy with 4 or 5 targets a game, all right? Obviously, this is an offense that prioritizes quick passing and getting the ball to tight ends and running backs as well, and doesn't really prioritize their wide receiver talent. Something tells me that, George Pickens would not be super happy with his role in the Steelers offense. And once again, that would have made the Steelers locker room toxic this year. The third reason why I don't think that this was necessarily a bad decision by the Steelers to trade George Pickens was they did maximize GP's value on the trade market at the time that he was traded. According to a report from Mark Caboli, the same one that I referenced earlier, Dallas was the only team in the entire league that was willing to give up a third-round pick for George Pickens' services. All right, and the only reason why Dallas upped their offer is because they didn't draft a wide receiver in the 2025 NFL Draft and were desperate to add a starting caliber guy. Now, I don't even think Dallas expected George Pickens to be as good as he has been in their offense this year when they traded that 3rd and 5th round pick in exchange for him. But the fact that there was only one team that was willing to give you a 3rd round pick tells you that the Steelers absolutely maximized George Pickens' value on the trade market. And obviously the reason why his value was so low, and as low as it was, despite the fact that he's so talented, is because other NFL teams saw the same thing the Steelers saw. And the reason why they were getting rid of him was because of the off-field antics and the lack of effort as a run blocker and the lack of effort in his route running, when he knew he wasn't going to be getting the football. All those different things that were issues with George Pickens here in Pittsburgh, those were the same exact reasons that drove down his trade value, and the Steelers, already deciding essentially to get rid of him because the players in the locker room were done with him as a person. They just maximized his value, so you can't really blame the Steelers for getting the most they possibly could have for a player that they wanted to get rid of in the first place there. The fourth reason is that, will George Pickens even be in Dallas next year? I think that, it's tough to say that this is the worst trade in NFL history or one of the worst trades in NFL history when right now the Dallas Cowboys, their chances of making the playoffs are very, very slim despite Pickens' production. And remember, he's a one-year rental, so if they don't bring him back next year, and they're already giving a lot of money to Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb and Quinnen Williams and all these big contracts that they have on their books, and George Pickens is playing like an all-pro. He's going to want to get paid like $40 million per season. I don't think Dallas has that in their books. If they weren't willing to pay Micah Parsons, are they going to be willing to pay a second-star receiver? I mean, maybe they are, but I just think that, if he leaves this year and they don't make the playoffs this year, honestly, I don't think Dallas got what they paid for with George Pickens, where you only get a one-year rental in a year where you don't even make the playoffs and you had to give up, a 3rd and a 5th round pick in exchange for him. I just don't know if the value or if the juice is necessarily worth the squeeze there for the Dallas Cowboys. Then the 5th reason, and another thing that we don't know about this trade, is we still don't know who the Pittsburgh Steelers draft with the picks that they got from the Dallas Cowboys. All right, that 3rd round pick, this next year's draft here that's going to be in Pittsburgh, it's a very good draft, in my opinion, and especially at the wide receiver position. So let's say, George Pickens leaves next year, next offseason, and the Cowboys only get 1 year of George Pickens in a year they don't even make the playoffs, and then the Steelers end up drafting a guy with that 3rd round pick that ends up being a starter for them for the next decade. Who wins the trade in that situation? I think the Pittsburgh Steelers clearly win the trade in that scenario. So I think it is too early to say who has won this trade, but that doesn't mean that the Pittsburgh Steelers didn't make mistakes when they replaced George Pickens. I thought that the trade itself was fine, but I think we all agree as Steelers fans that the issue wasn't trading George Pickens. The issue was not replacing him with somebody suitable. So the two big mistakes: number one, not replacing George Pickens with a quote-unquote legit wide receiver two, and then the second big mistake, in my opinion, is that they haven't utilized the skill sets of Calvin Austin III and Roman Wilson in the correct ways in this offense this year. I mean, Calvin and Roman are two very fast receivers, yet we rarely see them on in-breaking routes. A lot of them is out-breaking stuff, and a lot of it is stop routes, and that's not making the most of their speed, and we rarely see this offense go down the field. And of course, Calvin and Roman are very fast players capable of separating down the field. So this offense doesn't accentuate the strengths of Calvin Austin III and Roman Wilson, the two guys that they tasked with replacing George Pickens in this offense this year. So what say you guys? Let me know down there in the comment section. Is it too early to say the George Pickens trade was a terrible decision? Give me a yes or a no. I do think it's too early. That's my personal opinion, but let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section for today's pinned question. In just a second here, I'm going to tell you about our sponsor today at Harry's. While I tell you about Harry's today, let me know yes or no down there in the comments. And with that, let's have a word from our sponsor today at Harry's. And I don't have to tell you guys that maneuvering the men's razor space is an absolute nightmare. The quality products are always super expensive, and the refills are always equally as ridiculously expensive. And when you try and save a little bit of money, you get stuck with dull razors that irritate or even cut your skin, and you can really only use them one time. That's exactly why I switched to Harry's Plus, and I haven't looked back since. Harry's Plus has an advanced pivoting system to reach every corner of your face, refined blade tech for a closer shave, smooth and a weighted metal handle, guys, which is absolutely fantastic. It's Harry's heaviest handle ever for added control and comfort. But I think the best part about Harry's Plus is how affordable it is. Harry's owns their own world-class blade factory in Germany, which means no outsourcing and no middlemen. And because they control the entire process from steel to shelf, they keep costs low and pass the savings on to you. And if you don't love your shave, Harry's will make it right with you, no questions asked. Their risk-free trial means there's zero downside to giving them a shot. Just to show you guys that I actually use and love Harry's Plus here, I've actually got my Harry's Plus razor with me today just to show you guys what it looks like. It's got that metal handle on there that gives that premium feel. I used to use the plastic one that they have with Harry's, and, that's fine, but, I really like the premium feel of the metal. Just gives that extra weight for that extra great feel. And then their German-engineered blades that are involved with all Harry's products here are absolutely fantastic. They're German-engineered, and they give you a barbershop quality shave every single time without irritating your skin or cutting your skin as much as traditional razors do. So for a limited time only, our listeners can get the Harry's Plus trial set for only $10 at harrys.com/chat. This set includes the all-new Harry's Plus razor, one refined 5-blade cartridge, a 2-ounce foaming shave gel, and a travel cover to protect your blades on the go. Just head on over to harrys.com/chat to claim this offer, and after your purchase, they'll ask where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them that we sent you. A big thank you to Harry's for sponsoring today's edition of Steelers Talk. And now, speaking of regrets, all right, the Steelers, should have regretted George Pickens trading him away. There's also people out there on Steelers Twitter that I see that say the Steelers should have drafted either New York Giants quarterback Jackson Dart or even Saints quarterback Tyler Shuck in the first round instead of Derek Harmon. Now, listen, man, Jackson Dart looks like a legit QB1 for the New York Giants. I mean, good for him, all right? He's got really good pocket presence. His playmaking instincts are really good. He's really elevated that offense in New York despite not a lot of talent and not a great offensive line. Needs to protect himself better moving forward. But Jackson Dart, I mean, he looks like the real deal, all right? Like good for him. And then even Tyler Shuck, he looked really good 2 weeks ago before the Saints' bye week against the Carolina Panthers. Had a really, really solid performance. And, we'll have to see on Shuck the rest of the way. But, he's got a good arm, decent size, and, he had some pretty nice throws against the Carolina Panthers just a few weeks ago. But my answer as to whether or not the Steelers should regret not taking these guys in the first round, my answer to that question is no. I will say for now, I'll put that caveat in there because if the Steelers draft a quarterback next year and they suck, then yeah, sure, would I have rather, taken Dart or Shuck if they work out? Absolutely. It's just too early to be able to say that stuff. But what I know is that I love Derek Harmon, man. I love Derek Harmon and what he has provided for what the Pittsburgh Steelers have on the defensive line this year. He's a big reason why the Steelers defensive line has so much depth and has been so effective this season. And he's going to be a mainstay in this defense for many, many years to come. And in a win-now season, I think that Harmon and adding him to the defensive line rotation helps this team win more than adding a Jackson Dart or a Tyler Shuck, who would have just sat behind Aaron Rodgers this year anyway, similar to what Will Howard is doing right now. And you get Will Howard, a big, strong-armed, kind of athletic quarterback at just a 6th-round price tag. That's not a shabby dart throw, man, okay? It really isn't. I mean, he's national champion, all those different things. Of course, he can be mentored by Rodgers. He doesn't have to play too early into his NFL career like all these top draft picks usually do. And there's not a whole lot of pressure on Will Howard to play right now, and he can just sit there, learn, and cultivate his NFL skill set behind one of the all-time greats in NFL history. I think it's a great setup for Will Howard right now, and in a win-now season, you add a player in Derek Harmon that is unquestionably helping you win football games right now. So I see a lot of people out there saying, oh, we should regret trading Pickens, or oh, we should regret not taking a quarterback. But it's like, no, man, I think the Steelers are exactly where they should be right now. Maybe they should have got a wide receiver too when they traded Pickens away. But right now, I think the Steelers are in a decent position, and I don't think they should look back. So sound off from me down there in the comments section. How do you feel about the Derek Harmon pick at this point, in his Steelers tenure? Are you type H if you're happy with it, or type U if you're upset and thought the Steelers should go in a different direction? Let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. Now, the final thing I want to talk about today, and we talked about it earlier in the week. Mike Tomlin says that, Darius Slay, who's expected to be back this week, is going to be starting over James Pierre. But what I'll say is, number one, expect Slay to be on a short leash on Sunday. And then number two, I still expect to see James Pierre in some capacity on Sunday afternoon. This is what Nick Farabaugh reported earlier today from the Terrell Austin press conference. The defensive coordinator for the Pittsburgh Steelers said Terrell Austin says they will, quote-unquote, see how that works out on the snap count / rotation at cornerback between James Pierre and Darius Slay. Austin adds that Pierre has, quote-unquote, earned his way to get more defensive snaps, though. So, that indicates to me that this Steelers coaching staff has certainly identified James Pierre as a player that has played really well these last 3 weeks, which is 100% the case, by the way. And I do think he's going to get time this week. Remember a couple weeks back, I think it was in the Colts game, where they kind of rotated Darius Slay and Brandon Echols in and out of the outside cornerback position. I think we're going to see something pretty similar this week against the Bears, and it might just be like a straight-up competition at this point, where if Darius Slay is giving up multiple explosive plays like we've seen from him all throughout the season, and Pierre is locking his guy down, I think eventually we get to a place here where James Pierre just straight up wins the position. And, of course, you still have Asante Samuel Jr. on the practice squad waiting for his chance as well. So CB2 is certainly up in the air for the Pittsburgh Steelers right now. It's going to be interesting to see how it all shakes out. But who finishes the season as the number 2 outside corner for the Pittsburgh Steelers this year? Type DS for Darius Slay. Type JP for James Pierre. Type ASJ for Asante Samuel Jr. If you think somebody else, Brandon Echols, even Jalen Ramsey, let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section if you think it's somebody else. But that'll be it for today's edition of Steelers News and Rumors presented by Chat Sports. Thank you guys so much for stopping by today. We'll have more Steelers coverage for you guys tomorrow. The final Steelers versus Bears injury reports come out tomorrow, so I will have an at-home video for you guys tomorrow, as well as a special Steelers segment that'll also come out tomorrow afternoon.